प्रभु तव मूर्ति विनोदकारी पलपन विसरे नहीं जो विसारी जुगल चरण सोल चिन्ह जेह नजर समीपे रहो हमारी एह नजर समीपे रहो हमारी एह घनश्याम महाराज नीजे हरिकृष्ण महाराज नीजे ठाकुर जी महाराज नीजे सदगुरुदेव की जय। Our Supreme Almighty, our beloved Vyuda Ghanshyamprakashdasji Maharaj, our dear Thakurji Maharaj, our divine Guru Parampara, our Puja Guruji, and all of you Santos and Bhaktos, Jai Swaminarayan. You know, there's something common for all of us in this world. There's something common for all of us in this world. We may know it, we may not know it. We may be householders, we may be renunciants, we may be famous in the world. We may be poor in this world. We may be old, we may be young. All the combinations of one's current situation, if one thinks about it, still the 8.5 billion people on this earth have one thing in common that no one can change. And that is that we are all guests on this planet. Guests on this planet, what does that mean? Well, if you think about it, when a guest comes to your house, he doesn't or she doesn't come to stay at your house for a lifetime. He or she doesn't come to stay for the entire lifespan of that person. But the person comes for maybe 1 hour, maybe 1 day, a couple of days, a couple of months, maybe even a couple of years, but no more than that. That is the definition of a guest. A guest is a person that is an outsider who will leave your home's premises one day or another. It's fixed. There is nothing else that we can say about that. In the same way, we are all guests on this planet. We take birth by the grace of Maharaj on this planet. Main motive for all of us, as God has planned, is to worship Him, but 99% do not worship God, but worship the Panchavishes, or the worldly pleasures. But God has given this each and every soul some form of body. May it be of a human, may it be of an animal, may it be of a bird, may it be of an organism, etc., so on and so forth. But a body is received by God so that one can do the following: worship God or enjoy the Panchavishes. Now, right now, currently how it is that when a person is born, from the time of birth till the time of death, in that middle time span of 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, so on and so forth, in that time span, however or whatever one does, however one accumulates the merits, that's how one's next life will be projected or calculated. Saying so, many may have done bad karmas, bad actions. Many have done good karmas, meaning good actions. But it's said in the Shastras that our examination or our final exam is at the time of our death. So what does that exactly mean? Well, whatever one has done throughout one's life, at the end, that will all be projected in front of one's sight, by God, of course. And one will be able to see and determine right there, and Bhagwan will mark X for wrong and check for right, and finally at the end will give us a final result. Now, that final result, may we know it or not, is in our hands. And today we're going to take a look at some, you can say, modern examples and some examples of Bhagwan Swaminarayan's divine satsang. So this presentation's topic is making worth of our last moments. Our last moments meaning when we are at our deathbed. What are we doing? How are we going to do it? What's going to go on next? All that has some kind of formula. But if we learn it now, at the end we can make it worth it, or we can make it count. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you a small video. And this video that I'm going to show you is of a very, very famous person that all of you know. And I want to say at least 60% of the world is a product of the, you can say, Apple, iPhone, iPad, iMac, or MacBook Pro, all that stuff. He is the founder of Apple and the iPhone. At the age of 23, he became successful and founded this company. And just within 2 years, he was approximately accumulating net worth of $250 million at just the age of 25. He was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world history, we can say. The very phone that we are holding in our hands, the iPhone, was invented, created, was completely structured by his mind. And he is none other than Steve Jobs, a very down-to-earth businessman, entrepreneur, who gave us not just the iPhone. The important part of this message is not to take what he has given us physically, meaning technology-wise. Yes, that is all good, and he is successful in that very field. But more than that, what has he given through his character? What has he given through his speech? That is something that we want to look at. And at such an age of 57, I believe, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And this was one of his commencement speeches at Stanford University. So let's take a look at what he has to say and what we can take out, and then how we can vision it toward and gear it towards God. Let's take a look at this video.
I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And that is as true for work as it is for your lovers. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking, don't settle. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary.
Steve Jobs' message was very, very precise and clear. And such an intellectual in the history of, you can say, business, made such a clear message to the world that death is certainly certain, but it's how you deal with it that is very important. Now, in Steve Jobs' case, when he found out that he had pancreatic cancer at, we can say, not a young age, but a fair, medium, mid-age, he didn't panic, he didn't completely break down, but he took it in such a way that in his speech you can tell that he was kind of waiting for it. Nonetheless, all the obstacles of the world of the outside completely became zero when he found out that he had only a little time to live. Now, we may not experience that right now, but it's very, very important that we at least put into consideration that the time will come, thinking that we are only guests on this earth. So Steve Jobs took death in a good way. But as satsangis of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, as devotees of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, how should we take death? Bhagwan Swaminarayan's perspective, what is it? How can we achieve Bhagwan Swaminarayan's vision in our life? Steve Jobs had this vision, but we want to follow Bhagwan Swaminarayan's vision and see what he has to say for this very element of death. So according to the Vachanamrut Gadada, 1st chapter 14, Bhagwan Swaminarayan himself states, the outcome at the time of death is determined by the present state of mind. Thus, a devotee who realizes in his mind, my liberation is guaranteed, will as a result certainly attain liberation after death. This is Bhagwan Swaminarayan's divine prasadina words in the Vachanamrut. And as you can see in the red, present state of mind. Now, it's very, very important to understand that after coming into this satsang fellowship, this divine ocean, one has to understand that, yes, death is definitely certain. But if one understands that after death, I am going to Akshardham, if one knows presently, right now, that there is no other place for me to go but to Akshardham, and suppose one may be a sinner, suppose that one may not have the complete Panchvaratman or the niyams or the moral codes of conducts for a householder or even for a saint. Suppose that one is lacking in, you can say, these small aspects of moral codes. Yet if one still has the upasana of God, believing Bhagwan Swaminarayan to be Sarvopari Supreme, and one has the present state of mind that my liberation is guaranteed, according to Bhagwan Swaminarayan's statement, which has never gone wrong in history and which will never go wrong in history, Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that that soul will certainly attain liberation after death. Just by a mental state. That does not mean that one has to not perform one's spiritual endeavors in the form of puja, in the form of mara, in the form of danvats, pradakshina, noda, bhakti, in the form of sant samagam, in the form of reading scriptures. That all has to be done. But Bhagwan Swaminarayan is emphasizing not on spiritual endeavors, but on one's present state of mind. The main word here is present state of mind. Yes, everyone can have a state of mind. Oh, yes, I will attain liberation. I will go to Akshardham. I will be released from this cycle of life and death. Yes, but does one have it presently? Can one say right now that if Bhagwan Swaminarayan comes to take oneself to Akshardham, one would be ready to go? Can one say right now that if God says that I want to release you from this world and I want to take you to another world, will you be ready to go with God? Liberation, understand this word, there's many forms of liberation. In the form of, we can say, suppose we were jailed for doing some crime. If we get bail and we receive or we get out of jail, that is a type of liberation. So it doesn't necessarily only have to do the factor of spirituality. But in this context, Bhagwan Swaminarayan is stating the cycle of life and death. That is very important because this soul has been traveling in the cycle of life and death for countless ages, yet it still hasn't attained God. So if one's present state of mind is firm and clear, then definitely one will attain Akshardham at the end. That is without a fact, according to this Vachanamrut Gadada, 1st chapter 14. Moving on. This is our Adi Guru, from our divine Guru Parampara, Muktanand Swami. Satsangni Ma, the mother of Satsang. And we are very fortunate, devotees, that we have received such a divine Guru ancestry or lineage. You know how families have ancestries, family has great lineages that go back 100, 200, 300, 400 years, and you have this big tree or this chart of who came after who came after who, and presently you are here. In the same way, as devotees of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, as family members of Loyadham Parivar, our divine Guru Parampara is very important, and one should know who is our Adi Guru, meaning Sadguru Muktanand Swami, who we can have the darshan of presently. After him, Sadguru Adharan Swami, who wrote the Haricharitramrut Sagar, and we just celebrated his birthday. Adharan Swami, Haripriya Swami, Vaikuncharan Swami, Narayan Swarup Swami, our Dada Guruji, Puja Nanda Kishore Dasji Swami, and presently, right now on this earth, at the age of 63, liberating countless souls with his presence, with his voice, with his darshan, with his divine grace, our Puja Guruji. Such a divine Guru Parampara we have, and in the Sampradaya, in this whole sect, there is only one Muktanand Swami Parampara, which is right now very, very, very living, with 50 to 60 saints, parsads and sadhaks, who are all under Puja Guruji, and thousands of devotees all around the world who are worshipping Bhagwan with Agna and Upasana, and following each and every moral code as best to their abilities. What more can one need? That's why we are very fortunate to have this divine Guru Parampara. But we want to take a look at our Satsang Imam, Sadguru Muktanand Swami, and his life, and how he encountered death, and how he took it. What was his mentality? How was his present state of mind? Again, highlighting present state of mind. Well, at that time, during the time of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, Swami was traveling, Muktanand Swami was traveling in the jungle, and at that time Bhagwan Swaminarayan had set some prakarans. Yes, prakarans meaning chapters, where there's prakarans meaning one time there would be some prakarana of not eating from any cooked food from any householders, only begging for grains. Other prakarans where one had to sleep on the earth without any kind of mattress or any kind of, you can say, blanket or any kind of pillow, nothing like that. Such different kinds of tests for these nan-santos. They didn't need any testing, but just to show us, Bhagwan Swaminarayan did these via our nan-santo. At that present time, one prakaran was currently going where each sadhu had to go alone and travel the villages. Meaning, there's a rule in the Swaminarayan sect set by Bhagwan Swaminarayan that if a sadhu wants to go somewhere, wants to travel, wants to do a padramni, wants to do vichran, one has to have another pair, sant, with him in order to travel. At that time, Bhagwan Swaminarayan set a rule that no one can go with one another, one has to go alone. So Muktanand Swami was traveling in various villages, and he was following Bhagwan's agna to the best. And while traveling, Swami had passed through a dark jungle. Now, without any fear, Swami remembered Bhagwan in his masti, in his great divine aura, and he just kept walking. Now, what had happened was that it started to nightfall, and there was a wide river that he had to cross. Now, the problem is, there was no ferryman at that time because it was the night time. And if Swami didn't cross, behind him in the jungle were ferocious tigers, leopards, cheetahs, lions, just waiting, snakes, to devour Swami. Now, the other side of the problem was in the wide river, Swami saw crocodiles and snakes as well. So he was kind of stuck. And it was a big issue because it was death or death, no life in death. There was no other choice you can put there. And Swami at first thought, how can I cross? So first he was examining the terrain, and there was no way that you can find a scope of traveling or even crossing. Now he knew he was in a tough situation. And before I even continue with the story, if I can have all of you think, at that time, if we were in that situation, what would we do? How would we think? Forget about doing. How would we think? What would be our present state of mind? I'm asking myself while I'm asking all of you. I'm not just saying this just so you can hear, but I'm asking myself. And an answer is coming. Nothing. What can you do? Become frightened, become scared, cry, remember Bhagwan, but that remembering of Bhagwan is not due to his grace, but is due to some kind of fear. Maybe is there some kind of use that we are taking from God? We are trying to use him to save our life. Is that some kind of possibility? Maybe so. Yes? No? But that situation was very tough. In that time, Swami did not get saddened. Swami did not become afraid. Swami did not become scared. But Swami stayed in his joy as he was while traveling in the forest, remembering Bhagwan, and thought that whatever Bhagwan wishes for me will be for my good. That was Swami's present state. Now, I just want to tell all of you that that thought cannot just come at that time. Whenever, wherever Swami is walking, talking, there's always some kind of thought process that's occurring, that Bhagwan is the all-doer, whatever he's doing is very beneficial to me. In his each and every action, there must be some kind of thought like that. That is the only way. He is an Anadimukta, there is no question about this, but it's a charitra to help us understand. And Swami at that time thought this, that Bhagwan is the all-doer, whatever he'll do will be for my own good. And he just started to remember Bhagwan like usual. Now Bhagwan Swaminarayan is very compassionate, and he, through his omniscient powers, figured out that Muktanand Swami is in danger. So he took the disguise of a Brahman and appeared at that very spot and with a fairy and said to Muktanand Swami, Swami, come please, I will take you across. Swami said, where did you come from, Brahman? He said, I was there in the side, but you did not see me. It's very dark. Muktanand Swami took the Brahman's hand. Muktanand Swami sat in the ferry and crossed the wide river. And then Swami took his way. Now, just taking a couple of steps, Swami looked back. And when Swami looked back, there was no ferryman. I mean, it wasn't like Swami went a couple of miles and then looked back, but just a couple of steps and looked back, and the ferryman was gone. Through that, we can understand that Muktanand Swami at that time knew that it was only Bhagwan who saved me. No one else would come in this dark, dense jungle at the night time, at that time where there's crocodiles and snakes in the river and ferocious animals in the jungle. How would a ferryman be here exactly at this time? And Swami figured out there was none other than Bhagwan Swaminarayan who came to save him. And that is the prasanga of our Sadguru Muktanand Swami and how he took death. Now, according to the Vachanamrut, according to Bhagwan Swaminarayan's vision, that's something to think about even right now, even if we're at the age of 18, even if we're at the age of 25, even if we know we're young and we're not going to die. This statement is so etched into our mind, into our heart, that there's no way of removing that statement. I am so young, what can happen to me? I am so strong, what can happen to my body? But I've seen videos of bodybuilders and very, very strong men get heart attacks. How is that possible? It's said that working out is the best exercise for the human body, swimming, running, jogging, weightlifting, so on and so forth. Yet, how could a person get a heart attack if one's body is healthy? But in reality, it's not about how you take care of your body. It's not about how strong you get. But in reality, it's all about what God has decided for you. Whatever God has decided for you, that will happen no matter what you do. And suppose a person doesn't work out. Suppose a person eats all the junk food in the world. He can also live for 100 years plus, and it has happened as well in history. So it's not about any of that, but it's all about what God's wish is for us. And Muktanand Swami took this situation in a positive direction. Muktanand Swami took death and faced it in his eyes and looked and said, "You don't faze me." Because he had Bhagwan Swaminarayan's vision. So as Loyadham Parivar Bhakto, our Adi Guru, Muktanand Swami, had this vision, will it not come into us? Yet again, I'm reminding you that I'm telling myself, and along with that, I'm also telling you, will it not come into us, that vision that Muktanand Swami had, that vision of saintliness, that vision of motherly love, that vision of servitude and humility? Will that not come into us? That is a question to ask ourselves. So we are very fortunate to be in this divine Guru Parampara by the grace of our Puja Guruji. We can definitely say, who has given us this safe harbor so we can cross the ocean of Maya. But definitely, we have to think in this manner for sure. Moving on. This is the Vachnamrut Gadara, this is the Vachnamrut Loya 2nd. And Bhagwan Swaminarayan says, thereupon, Shriji Maharaj asked, in this satsang, when does a devotee become free from the fear of death and become convinced of his own liberation in this very life? Shriji Maharaj then began, while you were singing devotional songs, I thought about this. In my mind, I feel that there are 4 types of devotees of God who no longer fear death and who feel completely fulfilled. These 4 types are: first, one who has faith; second, one with Gnan; third, one with courage; and fourth, one with affection. These 4 types of devotees do not fear death, and they feel fulfilled while still alive. Bhagwan Swaminarayan in the Vachnamrut covers all aspects of life. May it be swabhavs, may it be destroying swabhavs, may it be life, may it be death, may it be the ekantik satpurush, may it be overcoming inner enemies, may it be overcoming external enemies, may it be dharma, bhakti, gnana, vairagya, ekantik dharma, may it be Akshardham itself, may it be Purushottam Narayan himself, all these various aspects. And out of grace, Shriji Maharaj himself asked, this is not a question asked by Nand Santo, but Bhagwan himself asked in this satsang, when does a devotee become free from the fear of death and become convinced of his own liberation in this life? The fear of death is the most dramatic, the most painful, the most, craziest point in your life. For mostly, we can say Steve Jobs did not have that mentality, but mostly in the world, this is, seen. But Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that if you develop any of these 4 inclinations, you will become free from the fear of death and also fulfilled, a 2-in-1 package. So number 1, what are these 4 types? One who has faith. One who has faith in God, that my God will save me from this cycle of life and death. There is nothing else for me to do. I am going to Akshardham. This is faith in God. Second, one with Gnan, one who has the knowledge of Atma and Paramatma. Atma meaning one's understanding oneself to be the soul, completely different from the body, separate from the body, knowing the characteristics of both the body and the soul, and separating oneself. and also knowing the virtues and qualities of Paramatma, who is Bhagwan Swaminarayan, and how great he is, his glory, his greatness, his glory of infinite universes all in one pour, such kind of glory, so on and so forth. Such kind of Gnan also releases the fear of death, and also one becomes fulfilled. Number 3, one with courage. One who has courage. One who has courage, meaning even in this world we can see a person who has courage is able to do much and is able to encounter and surpass many obstacles. In the same way, one who has courage knows that my God will come and take me to Akshardham. And number 4, affection. One who has deep, deep affection for God. One who knows that there is no one else but God for him. That such kind of affection also removes the cycle or the fear of death, and also one feels convinced. Now, I want to tell all of you that Sadhguru Muktanand Swami possessed all 4 of these virtues. All 4 of these virtues. In his life, through his charitras, we can tell and see that he possessed such kind of virtues. But all Bhagwan Swaminarayan is asking is just develop one of them in order to become free of death and to become fulfilled. Moving on. Sadhguru Akhand Anand Swami's prasang. This is a very, very famous prasang. In the Sampradaya, everyone knows about this prasang. Swami was a very, very highly spiritualized saint of Bhagwan Swaminarayan who could see Bhagwan's murti everywhere he went. While he was walking in the deep jungle, he lost his way a little and he was encountered by 4 tigers. Now, the tigers were far away and they were slowly approaching Swami, all of their eyes looking inside of Swami's eyes. Swami was traveling alone at that time, and Swami saw the tigers as well. What did Swami think? That is very, very hard and difficult, but we want to definitely know how the sthiti and the level, even for the smallest minute level of an anadi mukta is. And the tigers appeared, and this is what Swami thought. I would like to read the straight words from this book of Pragat Parcha Pade Pade, this charitra in the Bhakta Chintamani. Today my death is fixed. These tigers will definitely kill me. He thought, whether it be today or in the future, this body will perish. At that time when there's 4 tigers in front of you, ferocious. I mean, even if we go to the zoo and look at a tiger inside of a cage and we're outside of the cage, we become afraid when it starts to roar and come near the cage. Then what is it for one who there is no cage and these tigers are looking into your eyes, smelling and tasting death? How can one have such kind of thoughts that whether it be today or in the future, this body will perish? It seems like this is made up. It seems like this is not possible. But in reality, this is what Swami thought. Nishkuran Swami writes it in the Bhakta Chintamani Parcha Vibhag. There is no denial about this. Swami writes this and Akhandanand Swami lives it. He lived this moment by thinking in this way. Today my death is fixed. These tigers will definitely kill me. He knows that. That thought maybe someone can have, no problem. But more than that, whether it be today or in the future, this body will perish. Who is ready to let go of their body? Whoever is ready is number 1, enlightened, is a Satpurush, is a great soul, and number 2, has no, you can say, attachment for the body and maybe believes in some kind of formless energy. These 2 most likely have such kind of thoughts. But it's very, very, very unlikely because this is a very highly spiritualized state. And by thinking positively, he started to walk towards the tigers instead of running away. You can see in this charitra here, this painting, that the 4 tigers are doing pradakshina. And Swami is just standing there. And Bhagwan is there above. Now what happens is that when Swami walks, then they start to do pradakshina. And they're ready to devour Swami. And again, as usual, Bhagwan Swaminarayan comes to the rescue of his santo. And Bhagwan Swaminarayan comes and through his omniscient powers enters each of the minds of the 4 tigers and pretty much calls the death call off, we can put it that way. The tigers all bow down to Swami and leave the scene. Now, Swami possessed such kind of understanding, that's why Maharaj had to come. We are not going to encounter tigers. We're not going to encounter any lions. We're not going to encounter any snakes. All we're going to encounter is a bed. We'll be lying in the bed. And there, if we are afraid of death, if we cannot take death and look it in its face and say, I am a devotee of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, do what you want, but I have faith in God. He will take care of me. If we cannot say this, then how can we be called a devotee of Bhagwan Swaminarayan? It's not possible. We're never going to encounter any of these kinds of elements or situations, but if we are just lying in our deathbed and don't have this vichar or thought, then what satsang have we done? That's why start from today. That's very important. Start from today and start to think. Remember again, Kadra 1st chapter 14th, present state of mind. Very, very important. The present state of mind, if it's firm, that's what's going to happen. Even if one's body falls tomorrow, no problem. Even if one's body falls in 1 minute. Even if one's body falls in 5 years. Whatever our present state of mind is, that is how our gati, or that is how our destination will be projected at the end. So, Muktanand Swami took it in this way, the tigers left, and then he was merely back on his way. So finally, from that, Bhagwan Swaminarayan gives us a small statement at the end in the Vachanamrut Gadada last chapter 30th. In addition, I have constant awareness of these 5 thoughts. Out of these 5 thoughts, we only want to read 1. First, I'm certainly going to die and leave this body. It's imminent, meaning it is for sure going to happen. In fact, I firmly feel I'm going to die at this second, at this very moment. Look at these bold, strong words which have so much weight. I'm going to die at this second, at this very moment. This is the state of mind one should have. That's why Bhagwan is sharing with us. Such awareness remains in times of happiness and distress, pleasure and displeasure, in fact, amidst all activities. That is the type of vairagya I possess. Now, this is a very, very high state, but at least we should understand and believe that my death is certainly certain, and there is no fear. We should not have fear because I am a devotee of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. And one can use any of the 4 elements as we talked about, faith, affection, courage, or jnana, in order to surpass the fear of death and in order to become completely fulfilled. So at the end, I ask you all a question. What vision will you take for your last moments on this earth as a guest? Saying this, my humble Jai Swaminarayan.